recording, we are rolling there, and we have the AI tools with us. So let's have some fun. Let's get into it
Let's
here.
have a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's
Oh,
dance life.
yeah. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Hi, and welcome back to Limitless. Today, we have a special guest with us. We have Lenny Ravitch. He's the director with the Gestalt Institute of Tel Aviv. He will talk about 89 years young and the art of laughing at life. Uh, Lenny Ravitch is a global speaker and author who spent his life exploring the power of laughter, presence, and radical optimism. At 89 years young, he brings a perspective that's as wise as it is refreshing. Lenny, a warm welcome to you. How are you?
Oh, thank you very much. Very, very well. How are you?
Yes, I'm doing great, thank you. Especially when we get into some humor on the show. I don't think we have covered humor, creativity, and laughter before, so this is absolutely excellent. And you developed this world as the first Gestalt therapy via humor, creativity, and laughter. How did you begin all this journey?
Look, it happened. I give lectures on Gestalt, and I discovered that I'm funny. Even if I'm giving a serious lecture, I'm looking at the people in the audience, and they're beside themselves with laughter, smiling. And I realized that entertaining audiences, no matter what subject you're talking about, if you're entertaining, they're not on their phones. They want to be entertained real time. I thank God that I have that talent. And at the end of the lecture, it was for teachers who are at sabbatical. A teacher came to me and said, Lenny, I have no idea what you've been talking about, but the pain in my back is gone from all this laughter. And a light lit up in my head, and I said, oh my God, my grandmother once told me that laughter is the best medicine. And now that researchers are trying to find out if my grandmother was right. So I took this journey into reading research, going to workshops. I went to India to a gentleman by the name of Dr. Madan Kataria, who does yoga laughter, which is laughing for no reason. It's a catharsis. It has little to do with humor, mostly to do with the catharsis. And then I studied chakra laughter from the chakra with Steve Wilson in the World Laughter Tour. And I came to the conclusion with that, back in the 90s when I was starting this, there was no internet and you couldn't get much information quickly. But when information started coming, it showed that here, look, laughter and smiling and just feeling positive has an effect on the chemicals in your brain. You suddenly are in touch with chemicals like serotonin. I don't know how you pronounce it there, serotonin, which blocks pain. It relieves the pain. It also protects your immune system. There's a doctor by the name of Bernie Siegel. I studied with him, and one of his famous sentences was, "In my practice, generally happy people don't get sick." It has so much to do with health. It has so much to do with relationships. It has so much to do with the way you look at life and not to take things too seriously. So what I did is I began my first humor and laughter workshop in 1993, which was to combine what you talk about in your book, uh, the authentic meeting, dialogue, the authentic, transparent, open dialogue, the vulnerability, the ability to trust enough that you can talk about things that all our lives we were told, don't talk about this, don't talk about that, don't air your laundry in public. But this is exactly what we have to do in order to be able to communicate with someone else what's going on with us on the deepest level. I added to that humor. I added to that, not the kind of humor, where you tell jokes, but where people could actually laugh, even at the most despicable things. I had people in my group who were suffering from sexual abuse, all kinds of physical violence. And we would get to the point where I could say to them, could you say that sentence again to your father or to your mother and just add a little laughter like, Mom, you ruined my life.
Mhm.
To get the chemicals going and making what is called a future pace. In other words, from now on, whenever you start thinking about all those terrible things that happened to you in your life, you're going to automatically smile and laugh.
Yeah, and that's beautiful, Lenny, to be able to find humor even when we're going through a challenging time, because life indeed is that roller coaster of up and downs. And I know that you also describe humor as even a survival kit through decades, especially for your marriage, career, and global events and so on. Can you share a moment when laughter shifted everything, perhaps for you or someone else? I love to hear from you, your case studies or examples of life.
Yeah, sure. I was about 13 years old and I came home with a terrible report card. In America, they call a report card. I was born in America and, I just failed about everything. And I had to bring this report card to my mother, which was, you see, every time I messed up, they'd call my mother to school and your son needs a guidance counselor, your son needs a social worker, your son needs a psychiatrist, which I went through that too, because I was different and I saw in my diagnosis in my file that I, my I'm overly joyous, which is probably something out of the norm in school or in work even. How can you be so happy being in school and overly joyous? So when I came home with my report card, I was very, very stressed out, and I was very, uh, you know how a child feels when they're going to disappoint their parents. And my mother said, "Let me see the report card," and I gave it to her, and I said, "This is going to be the worst thing in my life." And she looks at it and she says, "This is my report card because I'm in school more than you." With that sentence, she cracked me up. That was the most humorous things I had ever heard till the age of 13. I'm in school more than you. I deserve this report card. And she made me laugh. And at that moment, it was a miracle.
Hmm.
All that disappointment, all that stress, you know, suddenly disappeared. And I bonded with my mother and we were smiling together and laughing together. So I realized that the laughter and the lightness of looking at life, like, what difference does it make that you had a bad report card? You know, uh, the greatest people in their lives failed. And when they failed, they didn't say, I'm poor me, I'm a victim. They took that failure and they made it into something else by learning something from it. So she gave me that bonding, that laughter. I want to tell you that it was the closest thing to a prayer. And I just took it automatically and passed it on to my next generation. When we talk about survival, absolutely a survival of a family, a survival of a relationship, a survival of your body and your soul is tied into laughter, humor, and optimism. And so when my son was 14 years old, he stole my car, which was nothing new because I stole my father's car. And I'm sure that my father stole his father's horse. So here we are. I get up in the morning and I have this car that's this beat up old secondhand or third hand Opel because I couldn't afford anything more than that. I was just a teacher at that time. And he took the keys and he was 14, he took his friends for a joyride, all his friends. He had about 9 kids in the car. And he got to a police barrier, and they stopped him. And his friend said, "Nothing. You don't have a license. Let's get out of here." So he put his pedal to the metal, and the police chased him. There was a police chase, and they came in on their motorcycles. They stopped him. They pulled him out of his car. They put him in handcuffs and take him to jail. I get a call 3 or 4 in the morning. Your son is in detention. I go and I see him behind bars, dejected. I saw myself at that age. How could I possibly disappoint my parents like this? I'm a monster. And I looked at him and I put my head against the bars and I said, Nati, aren't you ashamed of yourself? Who gives a car chase with a broken down old Opel? You're not coming home until you steal a Lamborghini. And at that point, he broke out in laughter. All that tension left us. We bonded. And ever since then, our whole family bonds on laughter. My children, I have 9 grandchildren. If you come to our holidays and family gatherings, nothing but laughter, nothing negative. There's no criticism, there's no comparison, there's no judgment. It's all, let's live in the moment right now. And this moment is the most precious moment we have. And let's feel the best we can in this moment. I call that a survival kit because it's not only healthy for the body, it's for the mind, it's for the family. And I take laughter and humor and optimism very, very seriously. And also, it helps me. I had a big problem with my ego. I was studying with a woman by the name of Laura Perls in 1983. She was the wife of Fritz Perls, who is the father of Gestalt. I mean, he's like, the statue. And at one point in the workshop, she said, you remind me of my husband. And I'm saying to myself, oh my God, this icon, she's comparing me. And then she looked at me, she said, he too was a narcissist. And I had no idea what she was talking about until I looked up narcissist. And I said, holy, this is true. This narcissism is stopping me. It's blocking me. It's blocking me from intimacy. By the way, the word intimacy for me is into me see. Into me see, intimacy. Once we're allowed to be vulnerable, and I'm talking about this saved my life. When she said that sentence, and I realized for the first time in my life what a feeling was, because I don't know if it's about like with most men, but I came from a family where any feeling you had was not allowed. You couldn't cry. What are you, baby? Get over it. Don't you talk like that to your father? You show no respect if you're angry or something. So finally, I got in touch with that vulnerability, the into me see. And the very next workshop I went to in Gestalt, the Gestalt leader asked me, he asked everybody, what would you like to work on? So it came my turn, and I said, my out of control narcissism. And I've been holding that up because it has a very negative impact on my life. And so I still am a narcissist. You can hear me talking, I don't stop. But I can choose to make it into something positive or negative. At that point, I have no choice. And this is what Gestalt gives you. Gestalt gives you that um, awareness that you can make another choice.
Yeah, and that's very beautiful, Annie. And I'm still amazed and impressed, and I'm so sure all the listeners as well that at age 89 you're still delivering keynotes around the world, from Hong Kong, London, Tel Aviv, and so on. What sustained your energy and optimism after all these years?
You want to know my secret?
Laughter.
Cigarettes and whiskey. Wild, wild women. They'll drive you crazy. They'll drive you insane. Look, I was once in a restaurant and the waitress came. Now, this is in Tel Aviv, where service is the worst in the world. I've been to Singapore where the service is marvelous. And I come to, I'm living in Tel Aviv, and the waitress comes over to me and takes my order, and she shocked me. When she took my order, before she turned to go, she said, "Thank you very much," and left. This is the first time in Tel Aviv anybody ever said, "Thank you for taking my order." So when she came back, I said, "Could you please tell me why you said thank you when I gave you my order?" And she said, "I was born in a family, raised in a family that believed that if you serve someone, you have a chance to get closer to God. So each time I serve, I get closer to God. And by you giving me all your order and giving me the opportunity to serve God, I want to thank you." And the service was beautiful. And when she said that, I realized that that was the answer to my narcissism. It wasn't about me. It was about the service that I give to other people, the value, if I can find some kind of value to give to others to improve their lives. You know, in the Jewish tradition, we call this tikkun olam, which means making the world a better place. And that is my mission. You know, when you said to me, "Lenny, how are you?" And I said to you, "When I see you, my heart soars like an eagle." I got a smile from you. Okay, this is my mission. And this is actually when you say, how do you get the energy to continue at the age of 89 to go to all these places? Lately, it's been on Zoom because of the corona and because of wars that we're having around the world and so forth and so on. So it's more on Zoom. But if I can go give that message, if I can get that message out, that it is about them and not about me. I appear in front of my groups, my small groups in Gestalt. I appear on stage in front of people. What is it that they want to hear? How do I want to see them leave this meeting, this talk? Is it going to change anybody's life? That gives me an awful lot of strength and the will to continue. And I really think that has an effect of my wanting to continue even at the age of 89 and do a little bit of change in the world for the better.
Yeah, wonderful. And I also know that you said that humor must be practiced like a muscle. And this is something that I talk about vulnerability. I talk about the vulnerability muscle. And just like we go to the gym, we need to practice that. How has this developed for you? And what happens when people begin to rediscover perhaps the playful inner child in themselves?
Well, when I teach humor, laughter, and optimism, I don't tell jokes or give any kind of lecture on the subject. What I do is I allow people to find their own humor. And because my humor is not their humor is not other people's humor. What is my personal humor? So there's a lot of play going on in my groups. The play that I learned in theater games, which are very releasing of tension and laughter and working together as a group and improvisation and so forth and so on. And when they come in contact with that part of themselves, that humorous part, that's where the inner child comes out. That's where the play comes out. And in English play or inner child and playfulness has two meanings. You either talk about the inner child that is the manipulator, or the inner child in you. You have two of them, and the other one is the ability to play and make life play. And if you ask me, how do you do that as a, you know, an executive or as a teacher or so, and with one foot you're dancing, and with one foot you're in the seriousness. You know you have to know your material. You have to be prepared. But at the same time, how are we going to make this fun? So in my groups, people discover how they make themselves or other people laugh. And this is the playfulness part. This is the inner child experience.
Okay, well, we have to play more, and we have to try bring that inner child out indeed. And you now lived through 9 decades here, almost, Lenny. What unexpected gifts have you come across, and perhaps that no one talks about? Anything you want to share with the listeners today?
Yeah. Something I learned from my father, who told me, live every day as if it's your last, because one day you're going to be right. So I took that as my motto. And the example was, I was with my wife. I'm married, by the way, 60 years. And people ask me, what is the secret of being married for 60 years? And my answer is, it's from the most amazing emotion in the world, fear. She's afraid to be alone, and I'm afraid of her. So as long as I can be afraid of my wife, I'm in good shape. By the way, I told her that she was perfect. I said, you're perfect. She, how the heck can you say that? I said, because I just decided not to suffer anymore. If you're not perfect, who suffers? I do, because that's my perception of you. I'm projecting something on you. It's not perfect in me. And I'm seeing that as you. And I'm suffering. So I decided that you're perfect. Not only that, I decided that the world is perfect. I know there are terrible things going on. I know there is good, and I know there is evil. But at the same time, if we can keep our heads up just a little bit above water and see the world as perfect, the way it is, just watching nature live out its game. We can't control anything. You just grab a box of popcorn and watch the movie. And when it becomes a little bit more distant, I think in Zen Buddhism, it's called to be detached, to become the witness, not only to live in the moment, but to become a witness to that moment. And so when I was in Turkey with my wife, we were at a resort, a summer resort called Budrum. And it's not bedroom, it's Budrum. And one day she said, let's go to Pamukkale together. And I said, what is Pamukkale? She said, it's the most amazing place in Turkey. It's 13 hours there by bus and 13 hours back. And I said, you go, I'm staying here. And she said, why? Why aren't you coming? And I said, because today is the last day of my life. And I don't feel like dying on a bus. So she said, where do you want to die today? So she gets into my head. And I said, next to the pool with a nice cold glass of beer. And if the angel of death doesn't come to tap me on my shoulder, I think I'll order a pizza. So that's what you get after 89 years. The important things, all the other crap sheds away. This thing we call success or money or greed or power, whatever that might be, just sheds away naturally. And you come out the kind of person that says, what is really important in my life? Being with my family, sharing the moments with my friends, my children, my grandchildren, laughing together. These are the most precious things in my life. And that is, how did you say, 9 decades? They went by real fast. I just want your listeners to know this is a very, very quick trip.
It sounds like a lovely journey, though. And what really shines through is, as your book is called, Everlasting Optimism. And if any of the listeners want to look you up more, Lenny, and perhaps get a copy of your book on Amazon, maybe you can just share some final remarks here before we let you go about Everlasting Optimism and what can they find in the book.
The last sentence in my book is dance life, don't drag it. You have two options. anything that happens to you. This is what I learned actually from Viktor Frankl, who was a Holocaust survivor. He was in the Nazi death camps, lost everything, lost his wife, children, lost his mother, father, everybody. The couple of things that I got from him were so precious. And the first one is, what is the meaning of this? How can I find meaning in my suffering? And the second thing he says is, no matter what happens to you, the most terrible things, the most wonderful things, the Nazis took everything from me. But there's one thing they cannot have, and that's the last of all human freedoms. The ability to be able to choose how I respond. It's not what happens to me, it's how I respond to what happens to me. Our whole life is response, and that response brings a certain outcome. If my response is I'm a victim and oh I'm terrible, I'm not, oh, you have another outcome. If you come out of this with something that you choose that is positive, that is optimistic, your outcome is different. And that's what I learned from him. And so that's the last actually sentence in my book. You have a choice. Anything that happens to you, you can drag it. You can look at a loss and say, I'm a loser. You could look at a loss and say, what do I learn from this? I'm glad this happened. I would never learn if I just succeeded. And so dance life, choose to dance life. Even in the Bible, it says, choose life. And choosing life is happiness, joy, vulnerability, transparency, the ability to look at someone and say, see into me, see, intimacy.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that about the intimacy. I love the way you look at that. And Lenny, just a final question for today then. If any of the listeners are, inspired today, they want to get in touch with you, where can they find you?
I can give you my my email address, or I'll give you my website.
Perfect.
www. We don't say that anymore. We used to back in the 90s. www. Lenny, Lenny, Ravich, Lenny Ravich .org. Lenny Ravich .org.
Fantastic. And thank you so much for having come on the show and spreading a lot of positivity here, just what we need with humor, creativity, and laughter. Lenny Ravich, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed being here, Nick. And again, I want to say to you how much I enjoyed your book, and I'm going to read it again. And there's so much in there that is related to what I said today about being an authentic human being. And thank you for the invitation.
Thank you. And thanks to all the listeners, and bye for now.
Bye-bye.